Hello guys, and welcome back to HJW Gaming and a continuation of my recommended formations. This time we are looking at good side tier 2s. If you haven't seen any of my other videos on this series, they'll be linked down in the description and also in the end screen and on my channel, so please go and check those out. Anyway, on to the video. I really hope you enjoy. First up for the tier 2s, we have Gimli. Now Gimli, even in classic Rise to War, has always been one of the best, strongest damage dealing commanders, so it's no surprise to see him take his place as one of the strongest tier 2s again, as he fits perfectly into the 2.0 meta. Gimli is so strong because he has a number of very high physical damage dealing skills, which fits him perfectly within the meta, as I said. The first of these is his top respect 0 skill tree, which is Experienced Warrior. Now Experienced Warrior deals 200% physical damage to 2 enemy formations every second round due to the 1 round cooldown. In addition to this, you gain +6 attack every time you deal this damage up to 5 stacks. So you can get a nice attack boost and increase Gimli's damage as the fight duration goes on. Once you allocate 10 skill points to the skill, you also gain +5 attack, which gives a nice increase again to Gimli's damage. Once again though, his highest damage skill, just the same as Rise to War Classic, is Durin's Blood. Now Durin's Blood has a 2 round cooldown, meaning it activates every 3rd round, so rounds 3, 6 and 9, and when it does activate it deals 700% physical damage to 1 or 2 enemy formations. Obviously if you're lucky and this triggers to 2 enemy formations, you'll be dealing 1400% damage, which is a massive burst of damage every 3rd round. On top of that, when you hit 5 skill points in this skill, you also get plus 10% skill damage for 3 rounds. So it will also increase the damage you deal from Experienced Warrior and also your next trigger of Durin's Blood, as well as other damage dealing skills such as Lord of the Glittering Caves. And again, when you allocate 10 skill points, you get another +5 attack for a damage boost from Gimli. His last damage dealing skill, and where I would recommend allocating any remaining skill points, is Lord of the Glittering Caves. Now this is a slightly weaker skill than all the others, so when you maximise this, it's a very similar damage to Experienced Warrior, where you get 200% physical damage every 2nd round, so exactly the same. However, the level 5 skill isn't quite as good. It means that healing effects are reduced by 50% for 2 rounds on the enemy target, and with healing not really being very prevalent in the current meta game, this isn't a massively beneficial skill, which is one of the reasons why we prefer Experienced Warrior for that nice attack boost to increase your damage. However, when you hit 10 skill points, there's quite a useful effect, which reduces the target's defense by 5 for 2 rounds. Now, of course, this can be beneficial, as if that reduced defense kicks in during the same round where you hit a good Durin's Blood, that can increase your damage, though I would say a reduced damage defense of only 5 is not a massive difference. His bottom respect 0 skill actually isn't bad either. It reduces the defense of 3 enemy formations by up to 10, so you will get a physical damage increase again, with 5 skill points increasing his damage to melee units by 6% and 10 once again increasing his attack by 5. Now this isn't exactly an essential skill and isn't as good as the other skills, which obviously trigger physical damage, skill damage. But it is a beneficial skill, so if you want to really push Gimli's respect up to the higher echelons, you shouldn't really be afraid to do so, as you will continue to see benefit from this and continue to get better damage output from your Gimli as you go through. Now, to look at Gimli's relic, it's very, very similar again to what we saw in Rise to War Classic. The only thing that's changed really are these kind of stats at the top. It does give him bonus HP, which at the moment in the metagame doesn't make a massive difference. The survivability of your commanders far outlast their troops, so it doesn't matter too much. However, you do get a nice boost to the attack, which can increase his damage again. But the main thing you're looking for is that Durin's Focus down here, which allows him to gain some very nice beneficial effects, which if you fully refine, you can get plus 10% attack. But the main thing is when your focus reaches 50, you also gain Pursuit, which means that you can hit through that nasty evasion of Gil-galad, which we are seeing used more and more, particularly in good side roleplay. So his axe, the Balin's axe, still has possibly the best upside, being that kind of pursuit effect, which we aren't seeing as many items with pursuit effects, as many people have converted their 1.0 gear. So pursuit is actually very, very strong, again, for countering those Gil-galads and other evasion effects. So if you're going to use Gimli, I would very much recommend getting his relic and refining it as high as you possibly can. Nice damage increase and pursuit. There's not really anywhere you can go wrong here. Otherwise, for gear, we are going to be gearing him like any other damage commander or physical damage commander. For purple gear, what you're going to want to look to use is a battle axe. Fully refined can get a nice 10 to 14 damage bonus. I'd recommend using this 2.0 gear, as that increased damage is more beneficial than what you will get from just the bonus attack on 1.0 gear. We definitely want that bonus damage. For chest piece, however, 1.0 classic gear is usually the best, particularly on physical damage commanders, because the 2.0 gear gives HP. So 1.0 classic, we are looking for bonus commander attack, and 1.0 classic gives the highest amount. So something like a superior hauberk can be very, very strong. Also, the goblin armor with gallant, or the scale mail with gallant, fully refined, also gives a very nice attack boost. So both of those are very strong options as well. And for helms, you have quite a few different choices. You could use the bone mask with hysteria, which I don't think I have one here. But the classic bone mask does deal a nice amount of, or give a nice amount of bonus commander attack. But the best item to use would be a classic full helm with melee vigor. The classic full helm gives plus 45 attack, which will be almost as much as, say, the 2.0 Cask of Pride. So that would be the choice that I would recommend using. Of course, I don't have this at the moment. Another slightly rogue choice could also be the Horseman's Helm in classic version. If you're looking to use Gimli with the mounted ram unit, so that the ram riders, this can be a very good item, as it gives bonus unit defense to your mounted units, increases your commander attack by 24, obviously not as good as the 45 from the full helm, but still a nice damage boost, and also you can get useful effects like resolve or warding to resist madness or stun, so they can also be a very, very good choice. And for purple accessory, probably the best one is the Hithlane, as it does give an amount of commander attack. It's not massive, and I'd recommend using a gold accessory where available. Speaking of gold, we will instead look to use the Axe of Khazad-dûm, which is a significant upgrade on the battle axe. As you can see, there's a large damage increase, even though I haven't really got this very refined, and there's also a massive amount of attack difference when you fully strengthen it. So there's a big jump here between using the Axe of Khazad-dûm and its purple counterpart, as you'll see in most cases. I don't really have a useful gold armour to show you here. The Superior Hauberk Classic or one of the other two armours that I mentioned previously are very, very strong, so I can definitely recommend using those if you want to use purple gear. But if you insist on using gold gear, the Berserker's Raiment is probably the strongest, or the Warborn Battle Armour. For helm, you can't really go wrong here with using the Cask of Pride. Whilst again, the bonus HP, as I said, isn't massively useful. This does offer the highest amount of commander attack with 48 bonus attack when fully strengthened, which is a massive buff, so is definitely the preferable item here. And lastly, for gold accessory, you will be looking to use the Palantir of Orthanc. This again is a massive upgrade on purple accessories, as the purple accessories don't offer the bonus damage, which will increase obviously Gimli's damage, particularly from those skills. 5 damage once you go into like 1400% makes a big difference, so it's definitely a huge increase. And the Palantir also gives a massive plus 48 attack, so this is undisputedly the best accessory for Gimli. If you're looking for support for your Gimli, you can look, if you want to look towards tier 2s, something like Gandalf the Grey can be a good choice, primarily just because you're looking to give damage avoidance to your formation. So the White Council skill is probably the best skill in the game at the minute for damage reduction, so a good Gandalf with high focus can provide a nice amount of damage reduction for your Gimli and keep him alive. If you're looking towards tier 3s instead, Gandalf the White is definitely the superior White Council user, as his respect 5 also can increase the damage of your commander as well. But if you're staying towards tier 2s, look no further than Gandalf the Grey. For my second tier 2 recommendation, we are going to look at Éomer. Now, Éomer is another very strong damage dealing commander. However, he has a slight twist in that he does actually provide a little bit more troop support than some of the other damage commanders at the expense of a little bit lower damage. Now, if we look into his skills, he does have 2 strong damage dealing skills, the first of which being his top respect 0, which is Marshal of the Mark. When 10 skill points are allocated to Marshal of the Mark, you deal 380% physical damage to 2 enemy formations every 3rd round. So you get a pretty huge 760% inflict of damage every 3rd round. It's not quite as good, obviously, as Durin's Blood, which could get up to 1400%, but it's still a very strong damage dealing skill. On top of that, when you put 5 skill points in, you do get that bonus plus 5 attack, so again increasing Éomer's damage. And at level 10, you do gain plus 5 initiative, though at the minute that isn't a massive usefulness, but mainly we're just looking to maximise that top damage skill. His respect 3 skill, Eodig, as well, is a very useful damage dealing skill. This one only has a 1 round cooldown, so will activate every 2nd round, so rounds 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. And this deals 400% physical damage to 1 enemy formation. But the additional bonus you can get with 5 skill points is 30% chance to deal additional damage once. So I'll need to double check this, but I think that means you deal that 400% damage a second time, but only a 30% chance of doing so. With 10 skill points, you do deal plus 10% damage as well for 1 round, which can be very, very useful if that triggers on a round where your next round's damage dealt will be Marshal of the Mark. So say if this activates in round 3, during round 4 you could get bonus damage for that Marshal of the Mark damage trigger, which can be very, very useful. Now his next 2 skills are both troop support skills. His bottom respect 0 increases the survivability a little bit of your mounted units. So this makes your commander and mounted units in the commander's formation have a 60% chance to gain damage received minus 3% per skill point. So if you allocated, like I have here for respect 10, 5 skill points, you would get minus 15% damage received. Only if that 60% triggers though. With 5 skill points, you also get initiative on your mounted units, which means they can act first. And with 10 skill points, you can also get an additional plus 5 initiative as well to make the units faster. It's not a massive benefit. I personally prefer Arid Leader, which is their bonus damage support skill. And this means that after 3 allied formation mounted units deal damage, they have a 50% chance to deal additional damage. Now it's 3% per skill point again, up to a maximum of 30%. And this can be very, very useful as it can just make your mounted units do a little bit more damage. Of course, it doesn't increase the commander's damage, which is where most of your damage will come from, but it can just give you that little extra boost and make Éomer quite interesting, as he's not fully reliant on his commander damage, and therefore is slightly more difficult to counter. With 5 skill points, increases the chance to deal additional damage to 75%, which is a big boost up from the previous 50%, so definitely recommend getting it to 5 at least. And if you can get 10 skill points allocated, you get a nice boost to survivability of your units. Of course, commander HP doesn't matter too much, but unit HP is a big deal, as it is a big boost on survivability, so plus 10% is very, very useful. Now looking at Éomer's relics, once again, Éomer has a very, very strong relic. So once again, I'd recommend picking this up for him if you're going to use him. He gives bonus command rather than HP, like we saw with Gimli. And that bonus command will just increase the survivability of his troops a little bit and increase that damage a tiny bit as well. But the main thing we're looking for again is that plus 6 attack and the ability, which is like the wind. Now, the benefit of this is that when his initiative reaches 30, you can deal the next instance of damage dealt by Éomer plus 5%. And when his initiative reaches 50, mounted units will also start to target enemy ranged units. Now, often enemy ranged units will be their highest damage units, so being able to target the ranged units means that you'll be able to take out the enemy's strongest unit a lot quicker, and they also tend to have lower defense, so you'll probably deal more damage by targeting the enemy units. Of course, with additional refine, that next instance of damage does increase, so you can buff Éomer's damage a little bit further on top of the bonus attack you get from this. I definitely recommend pushing this up, as it does really increase the viability of Éomer. For gear, we're going to be looking at very similar gear to what we gave Gimli. For purple weapon recommendation, I would recommend the battle axe, just for that maximum increase in damage and commander attack. Or for gold, once again, the axe of Khazad-dûm, for the same reason. Again, chestplate, we're looking exactly the same. Superior hauberk, berserker's raiment, or the warborn battle plate. So very, very strong choices. Again, and just increasing that commander attack as much as possible. Same reason for going with the Cask of Pride, though of course the Horseman's Helm I recommended possible would be good for Gimli as well. Obviously is a lot stronger on Éomer, as you're definitely going to be using him with mounted units. So that's a very strong choice. Bonus attack and defense for those mounted units. Can't really go wrong, though again a full helm can be a very good choice to increase Éomer's damage. For accessory, we're once again looking at the Hithlane or the Palantir of Orthanc being a massive boost, so always try and get a damage increasing accessory on him as much as you possibly can. So that'll be the choices that we'll go for. As far as supporting commanders go, you can look not really any further than Theoden. Theoden synergizes really well with Éomer because, as I said, Éomer's primary damage will come from the commander, however he does have some troop support. If you combine him with Theoden, Theoden can really push that troop support even further, so that Éomer will deal a really nice balanced amount of damage. He also has Éored Leader, which can stack on top of Éomer's own Éored Leader to make your mounted units have multiple instances of damage. When on top of that, Horsemaster will also increase the attack of your mounted units in your formation, as well as give them a little bit of bonus HP as well, so you can get some nice survivability on your units. And lastly, Rohirrim can increase the attack of your mounted units again, so just pushing up that unit damage. So Theoden synergizes really, really well with Éomer. Another good choice to go with can also be Azru Core, which if you haven't seen, I covered in my Evil Side Tier 2 video. So check that out, and I speak quite a bit about how Azru Core can synergize really well with a mounted unit formation. Last up, as far as synergies go, we also have Imrahil, but you can also put Denethor in as an alternative as well and use mounted units on him too. The reason these synergize really well is the ally skill. If you use a commander with ally and medium units, so mounted units such as the Cataphract and various other mounted units, you get a strong chance of 35% chance of recovering HP upon dealing damage. Now, if you have, say, Theoden and Éomer in your formation as well, both with Éored Leader activated to at least 5 skill points, you have multiple instances of 75% chance of your units dealing another instance of damage. So that will trigger this healing multiple times, meaning you get a massive amount of healing in your formation. So the synergy between these commanders is very, very strong and really improves their viability in a space where troop support is not particularly strong. Now, I didn't really speak about this with Gimli, so I'm going to kind of summarise both of those in one section. Ascension-wise, I recommend ascending both Gimli and Éomer if you plan on using them. So the reason I'd recommend Ascension, always in this case, is that bonus increase in damage. You can see here is a very strong increase in damage of +4, so I would definitely recommend ascending him just for that bonus damage, as it will just obviously keep helping him fulfill his potential. And ascending, you can continue to put skill points in if you want to keep picking some of those troop support skills. In Gimli's case, similarly, you get that +5 damage, and you can keep putting skill points in to keep getting those damage dealing skills. Now, last up for my tier 2 recommendations, we have something a little bit more out of left field and something that I haven't seen used particularly much. I saw him a little bit in Rise to War Classic, but not very often in 2.0 so far. And that is another dwarf commander, and it is Fálin. Now, Fálin is a really, really interesting commander in the sense that he is possibly one of the best tanks in the game at the moment, in a space where there aren't really any strong tanks. Most focused primarily around damage mitigation rather than increasing defense and things like that, whereas Fálin has a nice mix of the both. First up is damage mitigation. We have Thrain's Guards. Now, per skill point, this makes the damage taken by 3 allied dwarf formations for the first 6 hits initially take -3% damage. Obviously increased to 30% when you put 10 skill points in. That's changed a little bit by when you have 5 skill points, that increases to 8 instances of damage mitigation and is also modified by the commander's defense stat. Now that is huge, so you definitely want to maximize it to 10 skill points, as if you push Fálgin's defense up, you get more and more damage mitigation. This is probably the second best damage mitigation skill after White Council. Fálgin's probably the only commander that I would recommend increasing his commander defense stat, just because of the impact that it has on this skill and the damage mitigation. So definitely recommend taking Thrain's Guards. The second skill I'd recommend taking is his top Respect 0, which is Ered Luin Expedition. This makes for each type of dwarf formation unit in your army, the defense of the commander's formation is increased by 0.7 up to 2 stacks. So if you have 2 other commanders with dwarf formation units, so if you're using say Rams on Gimli, you could even use them on Éomer or something like that if you want. It doesn't require a dwarven commander, just the unit. You can get up to +7 defense, so twice +14 defense, which is a nice damage mitigation boost again by increasing the defense of your units. And if you put 5 skill points in there, you can also stack that 3 times by using a 3rd dwarven commander. With 10 skill points, there's also +2 HP, so again increases the survivability of your units. And of course, this requiring dwarven units means that his synergy with other dwarven commanders is really, really strong. So if you use him with aforementioned Gimli or Dane, as we saw from my tier 3 video, and probably the most meta commander at the minute, you do get some unbelievable damage mitigation for all of your dwarven units, which makes him a very, very strong tank. His bottom Respect 0 isn't really as usable. A little bit of healing, but as we've discussed previously, healing in Rise to War 2.0 is not great. So yeah, we're not going to be looking to take this skill unless we can allocate 10 skill points to get that +10 unit defense. And his Respect 3 skill is Durin's Blood, which we mentioned with Gimli is a very strong damage dealing skill, though we aren't going to be using Fálgin to deal damage, so we're not too bothered by this one as much. You can kind of choose which one of these two you go with. Personally, I'd probably go with Musician. If you have, say, a Respect 10 Fálgin at level 50, you can get the benefit of that 1 debuff removal, which can be quite useful. So, yeah, I'd recommend using these top 2 skills, using him as a tank with a dwarven unit, and just watching him fly. As far as gear goes, we're going to be looking to increase that commander defense, as I mentioned, as high as possible. So I would recommend using something like the Cutlass. The 2.0 Cutlass is fine. It also gives bonus command, which will again increase the survivability of your units, but that commander defense for bonus damage mitigation is the main thing we're looking for. Of course, increasing that command will once again have a great beneficial effect on the damage received by your army, making them even tankier. As far as chess pieces go, we're looking again to increase that commander defense just as high as possible, but also if you find something that has unit defense as well, that can be a very strong choice. There's quite a few things you can go for, but the quilted armour is probably the best. If you can fully strengthen this, you can get a good amount of commander defense. For headgear, the highest commander defense we can get for 2.0 gear is the Brutal Helmet, so that would be what we look to use. Strengthen that as high as possible. And last but not least, looking for commander defense, we have the Drums of Moria, which again, if we fully refine, can get nice a bonus in command so that we can get good damage received again from our army. So we look to use the Drums of Moria. I'm not sure I can really recommend much golden gear in this case. Just look for the best commander defense that you can get. There's a few choices, but to be honest, if you're going to be using Fálgin as your tank, it is probably fine to be using purple gear. That way you can focus your gold gear on your highest damage dealing commanders. Fálgin's relic is the Hardy Buckler, and again is a very, very strong relic, so all of these tier 2s have good usable relics, which is great to see. The main thing we're looking for here in this unit stats is that bonus command for damage resistance, commander defense for the way that it triggers his Respect 5 skill, but Adventurer's Determination is also a very beneficial skill. Of course, unrefined, all you gain is damage received for your melee units minus 1%, or additional damage from your ranged units plus 1% if you choose to go with that, but it's more likely you'd use the damage mitigation minus 1%. Of course, if you fully refine this, you can get this up to 5%, I think, or 6%. However, the other good thing about this is that the effect stacks up to 3 times for each allied dwarf unit present. So if you're running this in an all-dwarf army, you can gain up to plus 18% damage mitigation as well, on top of his Respect 5 skill. So this massively increases his viability again as a very good tank unit. For synergy, this is kind of already covered. We've spoken about Gimli, of course, so using Fálin as the tank in your army to make Gimli's troops more survivable is definitely a good option. You could also look to use Dane as well. Essentially, what you want to use is any kind of dwarf using commander, but I also mentioned you can use someone like Éomer as well and run in with the Ram Riders, as there is synergy there as well. So there's quite a good synergy between the 3 commanders that I have covered here, but if you can slide Dane in there as well, you will get very, very good effectiveness. And with that, that's everything I have to offer on these 3 good side tier 2s. If you have enjoyed this, please consider hitting the like button, and if you want to see more, please subscribe, as I will be continuing to produce Rise to War 2.0 content as it becomes available. And with that, I really hope to see you on the next one.